people are very under-muscled. People get fatter as they get out of high school and they don't play sports anymore and they get to be in their 30s and 40s.
You get the stigma automatically of being like, well, that's easy for you to say because powerlifting bro who took steroids to lift a certain amount of weight, like I cannot relate to you at all.
Everyone has a story. Every person in the gym has a different story. I bought the story that I was dumb. I thought I was stupid. I thought I couldn't learn the same way other kids could learn. In school, I was put into remedial classes, special classes, and was called all the words, retard, all those different things by classmates and peers and people like that over the years. That is something that I needed to lift through. So I think each person can find something, running, lifting, playing the drums, being in a band. Like I think each person can find their own version. It doesn't necessarily have to be lift, but for me, it was the physicality that kind of helped. Well, didn't kind of help. It shaped me and made me, and something I try to share out with people today, because I think one of the major problems in this country right now, obviously people are very heavy. That's a huge concern. But what people aren't looking at is people are very under-muscled. So people get fatter as they get out of high school and they don't play sports anymore and they get to be in their 30s and 40s. Life kicks them in the balls. They have kids. They have other things to focus on and hone in on. They don't pay attention to themselves as much. They slip. They're 30 pounds overweight, 40 pounds overweight. But once you get to be older and older and older, you're also simultaneously losing muscle mass. And that is one of the biggest detriments. So even though I would love to say, like, hey, not everybody really needs to lift, I think everybody really does need to lift.
Yeah, I like that term you brought up, under-muscled. Yeah. In fact, it seems like a very simple one, but it's eloquent because it's been my approach to talking to people so much about training. So many people, if they want to change the way their body looks or whatever, they instantly think about the calories in versus calories out, which is how it works, right?
And they're mainly thinking about calories in. They're not really thinking about how they're going to get anything out.
But their version of calories out is like this massive production. I always say, like, take small steps, literally. I don't know what video it was, but you started talking about the 10-minute walk, and then there was the studies, and that was the simple way of getting the calories out. But another simple way is just to have fun, resistance training. And I also like calling it resistance training lately, even though we could call it weight training or weightlifting. But yeah, like under-muscled is a great term. So many people fall so far behind. And then, like you said, like the ball keeps rolling and rolling and rolling, and they become 30, 40 pounds overweight, and they're not 20. They're 30, they're 40.
And the question to ask too is, like, how much would you need to do to hold on to some muscle mass? Like, probably not a lot, right? You probably wouldn't need to do much. Like, I'm just talking about you have similar muscle mass to when you were 19, 20, something like that. Now, some people may have played sports and things like that, so they may have had a little bit more muscle mass. Maybe they wrestled and they had some resistance with a particular sport that they chose. But for the most part, I mean, you're not really asking for much. I think it would take maybe 2 or 3 training sessions a week to be able to hold on to that muscle mass. You just end up in this state where you're going downhill fast. And I always say strength is never a weakness, and weakness is never a strength. And the whole thing behind that is also this idea of, people are very under-muscled. They're not strong enough to take care of themselves. My father ended up in the hospital a couple years ago. He was in the hospital for 70 some odd days in Jamaica Queens Hospital in New York City. And they couldn't figure out what's wrong with him. They did all these studies and tests and stuff. He had something wrong with his stomach. Years prior, he had cancer somewhere in his stomach as well. And the first thing they had him do, so my dad has always been like over 200 pounds. He's only like 5'3" or something, or 5'4". And so that's pretty heavy. And he got down to maybe like 145, 150 pounds. And he was just like, it just wasn't good. He nearly died a couple times. The first thing they had him do is they had him hold onto a walker, and they had him doing these little mini tiny squats. And the next move that they had him do was a hip hinge. holding on to the walker. And I was like, see?
Yeah, who did that?
I'm like, this is what it's all about.
Yeah,
they did that in the hospital.
Well, good for I mean, that's amazing. That's progressive overload.
Yeah, right.
One thing that I think is really difficult coming from someone like you is like when you give people like, hey, get stronger, you get the stigma automatically of being like, well, that's easy for you to say because you were a powerlifting bro who took steroids to lift a certain amount of weight. Like, I cannot relate to you at all. And the thing that is interesting is like, you always have to battle that.
Right.
I have to battle that. Like, I'm just telling you guys, resistance training, it's not, it's the thing that we always bring up, like the women who hear, I should do resistance training, and then they think, oh, you want me to become bulky and a bodybuilder. And that's been debunked over and over and over again. But it sucks when it comes from somebody like yourself, right? Like, you're always fighting that uphill battle of everyone being like, well, you trained at Westside, bro. Like, you trained powerlifting and like in a death metal gym. Like, I'm not going to really listen to you on that. When in reality, you're just coming from a health and fitness perspective. Like, under-muscled is definitely a term that we should be throwing around much more.
This is something I've been passionate about since I was a kid. I don't know what algorithm hit me the right way when it came to weights, but the second I started to move them around, I was a little bit better than my friends. In fact, I remember being like 12 or 13 and moving around a barbell in my basement with my friends. And my dad, he had the intuition to buy like an actual like lifting, like a Olympic lifting set, which was really nice. Instead of those kind of old cement plates and stuff we started with some of that shit, but my dad like later on was like, oh, if my boys are going to get into this, let me like invest in something different. And so we had some really nice weights and a bench and a squat rack and all that stuff. But I went to move around the barbell a bunch and I was able to do it pretty easy. And my friends were all squirmy and squiggly, and they like would lock one side out and then they would lock the other side out, and it's all rocky and weird. And I remember throwing 10s on the side and stuff, and then they got pinned by that. And I remember like just being able to do like 95 pounds pretty easy. I was heavier than the other guys, and I was playing some sports and stuff, but it just like for whatever reason, maybe genetically or something, there was something there in the beginning, and I fell in love with it. And it's been something that I could always come back to. I never intended to do powerlifting for my entire life. I actually tried to get away from it a bunch of times. I tried football, I tried boxing, I tried professional wrestling, and I sucked at everything enough to where lifting kept coming back. It kept coming back, and I'm like, I don't want this relationship with you. Fucking go away. But it never did, and so eventually I was like, you know what? Actually, this is like my calling. I think this is what I'm supposed to do. So just fucking eat it and go do it.